want you to try and put yourself in the shoes of Marco Polo for a second.
Okay.
It's the late 13th century. You're a Venetian merchant, and you've grown up where value means one thing, right? Heavy, shiny metal.
Gold.
Silver.
Exactly. Maybe some gems. You travel thousands of miles. You finally get to the court of Kublai Khan, and you're expecting this treasury that just blinds you.
Right. Mountains of gold.
But instead you see his officials stripping the bark off of mulberry trees.
It must have been just the most bizarre thing he'd ever seen. He's watching them pound this bark into pulp, turn it into dark paper, stamp it.
And then, this is the kicker, they demand that everyone in the empire has to treat it like it's pure gold.
He writes about it in his journals. He actually calls the emperor an alchemist.
But not as a compliment, right? He means it's like sorcery.
Yeah.
He just can't wrap his brain around how you can take essentially garbage, stamp it, and create value from nothing.
And that feeling that Polo had, that's our starting point for this deep dive.
The alchemy of value. Exactly. We're looking at the history of money, but we're stripping away the dry economics of it. This is a story about the evolution of trust.
We're going to trace how we went from trading actual things like cows and wheat to paper, and now to where we are today, trading invisible strings of code that we just agree are worth a house.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah.
And what the sources we've pulled for this really show is that every big leap in money wasn't just about convenience.
No.
It was almost always about solving some desperate, massive problem. A war, a logistical nightmare, a total economic collapse.
Yeah, we've got everything here. Archives on 11th century Chinese security, 17th century Swedish bank vaults, even technical reviews of modern RFID chips in banknotes.
So I guess our mission here is to figure out how money dematerialized, how we went from heavy things to light things to
invisible things.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So let's start with those heavy things. And I mean physically backbreakingly heavy. Before paper, you have barter.
Right. And the classic problem with barter is the coincidence of wants. You have wheat, you need shoes, but the shoemaker doesn't want your wheat.
So you get no shoes. But the sources point out something else. Barter is a total catastrophe for a government.
How do you tax people?
Exactly. The emperor can't run an empire on chickens and bushels of grain.
Yeah.
It rots, it dies. You can't move it.
Which is why they moved to commodity money. Things like cowrie shells.
Sea snail shells.
Yeah.
Used for thousands of years. They were durable, you couldn't really fake them, and you could string them together.
But shells only get you so far. The world eventually standardizes on metal. Gold, silver, copper.
But then the heavy part gets just absurd.
You're talking about Sweden, right?
Sweden in the 1600s is my favorite example. They had a ton of copper, but not much silver.
So they just decided to make these huge copper coins.
Huge is an understatement. They were called plate money. Because copper is so much less valuable than silver by weight, a single coin, a $10 piece, weighed up to 19 kilograms.
19 kilos, that's over 40 pounds.
Imagine going to buy groceries. You're not carrying a wallet, you're dragging a wagon behind you.
That's just insane. And China had a similar problem, right? With the strings of copper coins.
Very similar. In the Tang Dynasty, merchants were carrying these massive, heavy strings of coins. It was a security risk. It made any kind of long-distance trade almost impossible.
So that logistical pain forces an innovation. And this is where we get maybe the coolest name for a financial instrument ever.
Flying money.
Feiqin.
It wasn't actually money, not yet. It was more like a deposit receipt.
So a merchant could drop off his heavy copper in one city.
Get a piece of paper, travel light to another province, and then cash that paper in for coins there.
It flew because it was weightless.
It's the ancestor of the traveler's check. But like you said, it wasn't the currency itself. That leap happens later in the Song Dynasty.
With the jiuzi.
Yes, the 11th century. This is the first true paper money. And the interesting thing is, it started out as a private idea.
Not from the government?
Nope. Merchant firms started issuing these notes. But, as always happens in finance, they got greedy. They issued too many.
And went bust. Sounds a lot like 2008.
It's the same story, just 1,000 years earlier. The firms collapsed, people lost everything, so the Song government had to step in. In 1023, they nationalized it.
They took over the printing.
And they built this incredibly sophisticated system to create trust. The security features for the time just blew my mind.
We're talking about woodblock printing with 6 different colors of ink.
6 colors. And these incredibly complex, intricate patterns that were almost impossible to carve by hand if you were a forger.
And they had that other feature, the one I think we should bring back.
The expiration dates.
Yes.
A 3-year life cycle.
A Jowsey note was only good for 3 years. Then you had to take it back to the government, pay a little fee, of course.
The house always wins.
And get new notes. But it wasn't just about the fee, it was a security audit.
Oh, I see. By forcing all the money back in, they could weed out the fakes? Exactly. It flushed the system of counterfeits and let them control the money supply. It was genius.
But then the Mongols show up.
Yeah.
And Kublai Khan, the man Marco Polo met, he changes the game completely.
He does. He shifts from money by convenience to money by force.
This is the birth of what we call fiat currency.
And it was literal. Fiat means let it be done in Latin. Kublai Khan's version was, it will be done or else. He confiscated all the gold and silver in the empire.
And you had no choice. You had to take his mulberry bark paper in exchange.
If you refused to take it, or if you were caught counterfeiting it, the penalty was death.
It was written right on the note, wasn't it?
A very clear warning threatening decapitation. So when Marco Polo called it alchemy, he was looking at a system where the value wasn't in the paper.
The value was in the threat. The backing wasn't gold, it was the emperor's sword.
A very powerful backing. But while all this is happening in China, Europe is, financially speaking, in the Dark Ages.
Yeah, the sources mention Europe was actively hostile to the idea of paper.
Deeply hostile. In 1221, the Holy Roman Emperor banned paper for official documents. He thought it was flimsy and foreign, so they stuck with heavy metal for centuries.
Until the Swedes tried to solve their 40-pound coin problem.
And this brings us to Johann Palmstruch, 1661. He founds the Stockholm's Banco.
And his idea is simple at first. Deposit your giant copper plate in my vault, and I'll give you a paper credit note for it.
It sounds just like the Chinese flying money.
It does.
But then Palmstruch has this light bulb moment. He notices people rarely come back for the actual copper. They just trade the paper notes.
So he thinks, why not issue more notes than I have copper for?
Exactly. And that is the birth of fractional reserve banking. He's lending out claims on copper that he doesn't actually have in the vault.
And for a while, it worked like magic. It injected all this new money into the economy.
The Swedish economy boomed, but then the inevitable happened.
You printed too much.
Way too much. The ratio got out of control, people got nervous, a rumor started, and then you had the first ever bank run.
Everyone showed up demanding their copper plates at once.
And the vault was empty, the bank collapsed, and Palmstruch ended up in prison.
But the idea was out there. You could stimulate an economy by printing paper. This brings us to America, where paper money was really born out of war.
Desperation. The first government paper money in the West was the Massachusetts Bay Colony, 1690.
What happened?
They'd sent a disastrous military expedition to Canada. The soldiers came home, defeated and demanding their pay.
And the colony had no silver.
None. The English crown had forbidden them from minting their own coins. So, to prevent a mutiny, they just printed IOUs, bills of credit.
And we see the same pattern on a huge scale with the Continental during the Revolution.
Right. The Continental funded the entire war effort, but it collapsed into hyperinflation.
The phrase, not worth a Continental.
But the sources here point to something more sinister than just mismanagement. It was economic warfare.
You mean the British counterfeiting?
Yes. The British Army set up printing presses on ships anchored in New York Harbor, and they printed millions of fakes, very high-quality fakes, and flooded the colonies with them.
To intentionally devalue the currency and cripple the rebellion.
It's a tactical weapon.
Yeah.
And it proved that if your money is just paper, its value depends completely on security. This kicks off what the research calls the arms race between printers and forgers.
Then this is where Benjamin Franklin comes in?
Franklin was obsessed with this problem, and in 1739, he comes up with this brilliant idea called nature printing.
Nature printing.
He realized that the vein patterns on a leaf are unique and incredibly complex. Way too complex for an engraver to copy by hand.
So he didn't draw them?
No, he physically cast them. He would press a real leaf into plaster to make a lead mold, and then use that mold to print the design onto the bill.
It's like a biometric fingerprint for a plant. A forger would need to find the exact same leaf.
Which is impossible.
Yeah.
It was genius. But while Franklin was using nature, other officials were using themselves.
We have to talk about Spencer Clark.
Oh, this is one of my favorite stories. It's 1864, the middle of the Civil War. Spencer Clark is the head of the Currency Bureau.
And Congress authorizes a new 5-cent note. The law says it should have a portrait of Clark.
Now, everyone assumed they meant William Clark of the Lewis and Clark expedition, an American hero.
But the law didn't specify which Clark.
So Spencer Clark thought, well, I'm Clark. And he put his own portrait on the 5-cent note.
You are kidding me? He just put his own face on the money.
He was the boss. By the time Congress found out the notes were already in circulation, they were absolutely furious.
Talk about an ego trip.
But it led directly to the 1866 law that bans the portrait of any living person on U.S. currency.
So that's why you have to be dead to get on a dollar bill.
It is all thanks to Spencer Clark's ego.
I love that. So the tech just keeps escalating. We go from leaves to that special cotton linen paper blend.
To the modern era, where the forgers get high-res scanners and photocopiers, that forced a change in the material itself.
And that's polymer, the plastic money.
Australia introduced it in 1988. It's more durable, but the real security feature is that transparent window.
You can't photocopy a window.
It comes out as a black smudge. It's a simple physical defense against a digital threat.
But the sources mention something even more futuristic, active neutralization.
Right. This is the shift from making it hard to copy to making it useless to steal.
Like a die pack in a bank robbery.
Exactly. That's an intelligent banknote neutralization system, or IBNS. It stains the notes permanently. But the real cutting edge is something called DICE.
Dynamic Intelligent Currency Encryption.
This is the RFID chip idea. Embed a tiny trackable chip or barcode in every single banknote.
So every bill has a unique digital ID.
Yes. So if a bank gets robbed, they just tell the central network which serial numbers were stolen. The system flags them.
And if you try to spend one of those bills...
The scanner at the store, the bank just rejects it. They can remotely kill the value of the physical cash.
Wow, that is a massive change. The whole point of cash is that it's anonymous and permissionless.
But this turns a dollar bill into a piece of hardware that needs a software license from the government to work.
Which brings us to the final stage of this whole thing, the invisible era.
It really started with the Nixon shock in 1971, when the U.S. went off the gold standard.
That's when all money officially became fiat, not backed by anything physical.
The sources have this great term for it. They call it a social ghost.
A social ghost. I like that.
The dollar in your pocket has no intrinsic value. It's just a shared story. We all agree to pretend it has value, and so it does.
And now that story's moving entirely online. We see Bitcoin emerge in 2009.
And whatever you think of crypto, the core innovation was solving the trust problem without a king or a government.
With fiat, you trust the government not to pull a Johann Palmstruch and print too much.
With something like Bitcoin, you don't trust a person, you trust the math. You trust the distributed network.
It's the ultimate dematerialization. We went from 40-pound copper plates that broke wagons
to paper notes that could be burned or forged.
To plastic notes that can be remotely turned off.
To now, invisible strings of code that live everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
So, to bring this all together, we started with Marco Polo thinking the emperor was an alchemist.
But really, we're the alchemists now. We look at pixels on a screen and trade our actual lives for them. We've all accepted the magic trick.
And I think that's the final thought I want to leave everyone with. We spent 5,000 years building this technology of trust. We've moved the security from the metal itself to the paper's design to the government that backs it.
And now to the network that runs it.
So what happens if the network goes down?
Or, maybe more to the point, what happens if our social consensus breaks? If money is just a story we all agree on, it only has value as long as we all keep believing in the same story.
If that faith fractures, do we go back to trading heavy copper plates?
I really hope not. My back couldn't take it.
Fair point. A huge thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it changes how you look at that crumpled bill in your pocket.
Keep learning.